Welcome back to Stormi Tells Ghost Stories on my Girls Rock Productions channel. This week, I will be headed across the pond to visit one of the most haunted cities in all of Europe, Edinburgh, Scotland. This week, I will be talking about two of the most haunted sites in this entire city, the Westbow House of Horrors in Old Town and Edinburgh Castle. I will start with the house marred with witchcraft and bestiality, the Westbow House of Horrors. The Westbow House of Horrors is one of the houses that was known as one of Edinburgh's most haunted. For a long time, everyone thought that this house was demolished, but traces of it can still be found on the jolly streets of Edinburgh's Victoria Terrace. It used to be the home of Major Thomas Wire, also known as the Wizard of Westbow after his death. He lived with his unmarried sister Jean, mostly known by Grizel, in their house in Old Town. Originally from Lanarkshire, their mother had a reputation for having the second sight, but they were mostly known as devoted Christians. He used to be seen as an upstanding citizen as a Covenanter soldier with a good career in the army behind him. He was also a very strict Presbyterian who would lead big groups of Christians in prayer. In 1650, he was even appointed commander of the Edinburgh Town Guard, so to everyone else he was nicknamed as one of the Bowhead Saints. But looks can be very deceiving, and he had some dark secrets underneath that polished exterior. He has even been seen as someone that could have inspired the character Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So around 1670, people started to notice a shift in Wire's behavior. At one of their prayer meetings, he stood up and started to speak. He was then around 70 and people noticed that he seemed ill. He didn't pray that day though, but started to confessing heinous acts instead. This includes everything from bestiality, incest, witchcraft, to communicating with the dead. In some versions, however, it was after Wire's retirement that he fell ill and started making these confessions. And according to this version, it was from the sickbed, not during a prayer meeting, that he confessed his crimes. They called a doctor, but his confessions just kept coming, insisting that it was all true. Even the Lord Provost would not believe the confessions at first, as they all came as a big surprise. They wanted to dismiss it all as him being mentally disturbed instead, but he kept repeating his sins, refusing to back down. Even his sister Grizel, known as a quiet spinster, confirmed it all when they went to question her. Not only did she confirm what he'd already said, but she continued to confess to more demonic activities, giving testimonies of even more vile and exaggerating things. According to her, he had once been taken by a demonic stranger in a coach on fire and taken to Dalkeith, a town bordering Edinburgh. Exactly why Dalkeith would be a place a satanic coach would drive was never really explained. She even showed a mark on her forehead that looked like the shape of a horseshoe. She apparently proudly said that it was a gift from the devil himself. There, he supposedly was given supernatural intelligence in the form of a walking stick by a servant of Satan. This walking stick had a carved human head on the top and was supposedly a gift from Satan himself. He would even usually use it when leading their prayers. Those who encountered Wire during his lifetime would later claim that the walking stick would dance in front of him as he walked down the street. Though, if that were true, nobody would have been surprised when he confessed to being a follower of the Lord of Darkness. Most cases of witches and wizards happened after someone else accused someone of sorcery. This case is a very different matter, as they accused themselves. Why on earth would they further worsen the case for themselves, even Jean to the point of implicating herself in that matter? They were taken away to Edinburgh Tolbooth by the Baileys, where they were interrogated and found guilty. Both received death sentences. Now, Scotland was not a good place to be if you were condemned for witchcraft. Only Germany had more witch trials than Scotland during this time. Historians estimate around 4,400 witches were executed, and unlike England, who hanged the witches, Scotland followed a more barbaric and continental law of burning them all. While they both were waiting their execution, they were held in a former leper colony below Calton Hill. Major Thomas Wire was executed in 1670 at the Galilee, meaning gallows filled. He was garroted and burned together with the demonic walking stick. It is said that both took an exceptionally long time to burn. He was asked for his last words, but chose not to beg for forgiveness. He reportedly said, "Let me alone. I will not. I have lived as a beast, and I must die a beast." Grizel also died, but was hanged in the Grassmarket. According to reports, her hanging was also dramatic and unrepentant. She supposedly tried to take off all her clothes in front of the crowd and refused to beg for mercy for her crimes. Their bodies were buried at the base of gallows at Shrub Hill, according to the customs of the time, but their seat apparently wasn't enough to cleanse the house of paranormal activity. After the execution, the house became abandoned and known as a haunted place, where the locals reportedly were seeing lights in the windows, although no one lived there, as well as shadows moving around. There are also tales about music coming from the abandoned house. It stayed like that for over a century, and legends surrounding the house continued to grow. For example, they told a story about a ghostly coach that was pulled by 6 horses spotted outside the abandoned building. A couple bought and tried to move into the house in 1780, an ex-soldier named William Patella and his wife, but according to the stories, they never stayed there for more than one night. They claimed to have seen the ghostly apparition of demonic entities and the appearance of a calf staring at them in their bed. The house as it was demolished in 1878, and the locals thought for a long time that they were done with the hauntings from the cursed major. However, it was discovered that a new house was built on top of it, today used as a Quaker meeting house on Victoria Terrace. This wasn't known before 2014. Apparently, the part of the house that still remains is now the toilet area of the Quaker meeting house. Today, it is one of the more colorful streets of Edinburgh, with picturesque boutiques, cafes along the cobbled streets. But the haunted rumors have still not died down. One of the staff working there claims to have seen the major walking right through the walls. Now, we are going to visit a castle whose site predates even the time of Jesus Christ, Edinburgh Castle. The site on which Edinburgh Castle is built predates even the time of Jesus and has been the scene of hundreds, if not thousands, of gruesome deaths throughout the century. Much blood had been spilt on the grounds, and many lives were lost well before Mary, Queen of Scots, began to rebuild the castle before being exiled from the country. With a history like that of Edinburgh Castle, it's no wonder that it is said to be home to quite a few ghosts. From headless drummer to a ghostly dog, Edinburgh Castle has it all. There are stories that tunnels lie beneath Edinburgh Castle. One in particular is said to extend the entire length of the Royal Mile and exit at the Palace of Holyrood. The tunnel is believed to be haunted by a lone piper, a small boy who disappeared near the Kirk while helping map out the underground passageway. Now, if you were to walk past the Kirk today on the Royal Mile, you might hear the faint whisper of a lone set of bagpipes playing underneath this famous city street. For beneath the cobblestones, a lone piper still plays. He was a small boy, the only person small enough to fit between the walls of the tunnel without getting stuck. He walked to his lonely fate on a now unknown date in the castle's history. Early safety precautions were put in place. The boy was to play the bagpipes as loud as he could as he stepped into the darkness, those safely above ground mentally keeping an eye on him, listening to the sound of his playing, tracking him under the city streets. Slowly the boy made his way down into the dark tunnels, the watch party plotting his twists and turns, the deeper into the darkness he went. That was until the pipes suddenly stopped playing outside of Kirk. Now, for days, they searched for the small boy and his pipes. They were so reluctant to call off the search for a boy who seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Eventually, with a very heavy heart, the city council ordered that the entrance to the tunnel be sealed with bricks. No trace of the boy was ever found. Another story that involves a young military musician is that of a headless drummer. The headless drummer boy of Edinburgh Castle was last sighted by servants in the central courtyard in 1650. A few months later, the castle was attacked by Cromwell's army, leading many to believe that he is a harbinger of danger. No one knows who the headless body of the boy drummer belongs to, and although this ghostly apparition hasn't been seen for over 370 years, that's not to say he's been forgotten altogether. It's said that when the living have left the castle, a distant rat-a-tat-tat of the drum can still be heard. One of the most popular ghosts of Edinburgh Castle is that of the Grey Lady. There are two theories of who she may be. The first is that she is the spirit of Janet Douglas, Lady of Glamis, who actually appears in 2 locations in Scotland if it is her. Janet Douglas, Lady of Glamis, was burned at the stake on Castle Hill July 17, 1537 on a false accusation of witchcraft and treason. Following her death, a Grey Lady believed to be Janet was seen wandering through the castle hallways. Janet is also believed to be haunting Glamis Castle, wandering through the family chapel and clock tower. In the summer of 1537, when the final accusations of witchcraft and treason were being brought against her, her family and servants would be tortured at the hands of King James V. Her servants eventually cracked, giving false evidence against her. After being falsely accused of poisoning her first husband, John Lyon, Lord of Glamis, in 1528, as well as being suspected of plotting against the then King, James V, Janet would be tormented and suspected of treason for most of her life until she was burned at the stake right in front of her 16-year-old son. Although she was executed in Edinburgh Castle, and despite there being rumored sightings of a Grey Lady, it is at Glamis Castle in Angus where Janet is most active. Known affectionately as the Grey Lady of Glamis, Janet Douglas haunts 2 locations in Glamis Castle. Often found kneeling in the castle's chapel, the family have reserved a permanent seat for her to this day. No one is allowed to use it. Her spirit is also witnessed in the turret above the castle's clock tower, where some have seen her suffering in the flames. Now, the other person the Grey Lady of Edinburgh Castle is suspected to be is the mother of Mary, Queen of Scots herself, Marie de Guise. When Marie died of dropsy in June of 1560, her corpse was kept in a small chapel within the castle grounds, St. Margaret's Chapel, wrapped in a shroud inside of a lead coffin. She would stay there for just over 9 months before finally being secretly taken to France for burial in the convent of Saint-Pierre in Reims, where her sister, Renee, was abbess. Regardless of who the Grey Lady is, she normally is spotted in older parts of the castle, normally wandering about and sometimes weeping. The dungeons of Edinburgh Castle are supposedly the most haunted area in the building. When construction workers were employed to carry out work in Queen Anne Tower in 2002-2003, some refused to work there alone. These ghosts are more than likely prisoners captured and held in the castle during the Napoleonic Wars. These prisoners were rumored to have harassed the men renovating the tower. Hazy blue orbs have also appeared above people's heads when photographs are taken in the tower. Now, one soul who haunts the dungeons is a very unfortunate story, and is probably the castle's unluckiest prisoner. Now, little is known about the individual who was so desperate to escape the castle dungeons that he decided to do so in a dung cart. Imprisoned in the notoriously brutal dungeons of Edinburgh Castle, one prisoner decided to try to escape by hiding in a wheelbarrow of waste from the castle's latrines, clearly expecting a soft landing on the large pile of dung. Instead, the burrow that he was hiding in was unceremoniously dumped over the walls of the castle, directly over the ragged rocks below. His neck was broken, and instead of escaping, he'd just been tipped to his death. Those who have witnessed the ghost have mentioned the smell of dung in the air and having the sense that someone is trying to push them over the castle walls. Some say that the man was recaptured and not immediately killed by the fall, breaking his neck, but I personally think that is highly unlikely. Lastly, one of my favorite ghosts on the grounds, a scruffy black dog that has been seen wandering about. There is actually a small pet cemetery within the walls of the castle. In this cemetery, many of the soldiers' pets and mascots were laid to rest. There are reports of a black or possibly even a white spectral dog that have been associated with this cemetery. The dog is either seen or heard within and around the cemetery and is thought to be one of the many dogs buried within the walls. That concludes this week's first episode of Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted Edinburgh. I hope you enjoyed hearing about 2 of the most haunted locations in this very historic city, the Westbow House of Horrors and Edinburgh Castle. Remember to like and subscribe to my Girls Rock Productions channel. While you're here, check out some of my other playlists. I do live covers and lessons on my Stormi Teaches Music playlist. The covers are Mondays at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Then I teach the song I covered on guitar Wednesdays at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. I also just started the Stormi Talks True Crime playlist, where I discuss some of the most notorious and sometimes controversial true crime cases. Those new videos are posted Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. If you are ever in the Wilmington, North Carolina area, sign up for the Wilmington Ghosts Walking Tours or the Wilmington Spirits and Spirits Pub Crawl with U.S. Ghost Adventures. You can have me or one of our other talented guys show you around our historic downtown and hear some of the darkest stories the beautiful city on the beach has to offer. While you are visiting, if you decide you want to stay or buy a vacation home, check out my Moving to Coastal Carolina channel and contact me, as I am a licensed realtor in the southeastern North Carolina area. Tune in next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern for our next week's installment of Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted Edinburgh. Until then, have a great week and be safe.